All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I love teaching with Trish. It's always a blessing. And I always appreciate all of you who are here. Welcome. Good morning. We're going to kind of explore the meaning of life from one perspective and then go into tools of how to really do that. And so appreciating that you're all writing in the chat box your perception of the meaning of life. Um, and I am going to kind of share my perception of it because since Trish and I are teaching the class, it's about how we see it. And to be really honest, I really firmly do believe that the meaning of life is that we're here to learn to love, starting with ourselves and then going out to each other. And I'll tell you where I adopted this from. As most of you probably know, I have had a career as a television producer. For 20 years, I produced television and won Emmy Awards and so on and so forth. And I did a lot of documentary and national broadcast shows on near-death experiences. And back when I was doing that, the world's foremost authority from kind of a clinical perspective on near-death experiences was a man named Dr. Kenneth Ring, like on your finger. And when I first started interviewing him, he had been doing clinical research and comparative analysis for over 10 years on people who had had legitimate near-death experiences. Now, he would only accept a case if it was somebody who had been declared dead by a doctor or a police officer. They had to have been dead for at least 20 minutes. They had to have some partial memory of what took place while they were out there. And they had to be willing to be hypnotized by a professional hypnotist while Dr. Ring asked questions to probe the subconscious. 300 cases from all over the world. Black, brown, yellow, white, Christian, Jew, atheist, children, adults. 300 diverse people that had all had a near-death experience. Now, their experiences when they were out there were pretty diverse. They were pretty different. Some people saw the great light. Some people went through a tunnel. Some people saw deceased relatives. Some people saw religious figures based on their spiritual beliefs. But there was a commonality he wasn't even looking for when he began. And that was the meaning of life. Every single person, while they were having their near-death experience, if they were shown the meaning of their life or they remembered the meaning of their life, it was always the same. I'm here to learn to love. Now, what was diverse was that most people would realize that the meaning of their life was to learn to love, starting with themselves, despite their veils of past pain, their childhood wounding, their adult disillusionments. So one person would be, I'm here to learn to love myself, even though I lost my legs in the car accident. I'm here to learn to love myself, even though my father beat me, or my wife left me, or my business went bankrupt, or I never finished college. People had their own human foibles, their own human challenges. Again, sometimes childhood wounding, sometimes adult disillusionments, but it was always, I'm here to learn to love myself, even though, despite these challenges. So with that as the perception of the meaning of life, Trish and I thought it would be really lovely, since it's an intimate group that has been meeting on Saturday mornings, for us to really look at that question. Okay, if the meaning of my life is to love myself, despite fill in the blank, what's that fill in the blank for each of us? And how do we really stay conscious so that that fill in the blank isn't a constant reminder of how wounded we are or how screwed up we are, but rather that that's the hurdle that our life is dedicated to to getting over and still loving ourselves. So I am going to turn it over to my teaching partner, Trish, and then we look forward to hearing from you guys. But Trish, I'm putting the spotlight on you.
Sorry, I was just typing it in. And I'll answer your question, Scott. I love myself despite being abandoned by my dad and being hit by my mom and being left by all my partners, which I can own that I probably pushed them into those into recreating that wound. I love myself despite being raped twice. I love myself despite my weird habits of whatever it is that I do. Not the dishes. That's not what I do. Unlike my auntie who's cleaning his house for his wife right now, which is also part of the meaning of life, because saying what you mean and meaning what you say. So thank you, Scott, for bringing in the self-love piece, because that is really a big part of the meaning of life, is acceptance of self, so that we can expand our capacity to accept and love others. And honestly, I mean, I know some of you have heard this before, but for me, my definition of love has changed over the years. It looked a lot like romantic Disney love, but now it looks like acceptance. It looks like being fully honest. And that's part of what my meaning of life looks like now, is the radical honesty, radical expression of myself. And so when I show up to other people, or when other people, like, I invite their true authentic self, because that gives us all the opportunity to go deeper in love and in acceptance and understanding. And I had a thought. I'm gonna be really inflammatory for just a brief moment. I had this thought the other day, and I was like, oh my goodness, if I live inauthentically, and if I show up inauthentically, it's really my lying to the world. And I was thinking about that and just kind of like pondering that I'm not giving people the opportunity to love me, and I'm not actually loving me in that place of being inauthentic. I'm still contorting, right? So when we show up in radical honesty, when I say, Scott, I'm upset, I got all this going on. Or Scott's like, hey, I'm upset, I've got all this going on. And it could be triggered by me. And I could be triggered by Scott. And it's right there where I get to choose to lean in to him or to me and be like, wow, I can hold you there. I can love you in that space, and I can love me in my discomfort, right? I can love me in my discomfort of holding space for you, or holding space for my own feelings that come up. So the place of radical honesty is a really big place of showing up in your full self-love as well, and giving people the opportunity to really show up for you and show up in them, in their own places. Like, so when you get to express yourself, that gives them the opportunity to make their own personal choices, right? So as you know, I'm a big codependency, like I love to kind of like love and sand the codependency fawning pieces of life, because, you know, a lot of us are taught to be codependent in our society. And in that place is like, oh, we're taught to not say the full truth, to mold ourselves to look good. And that's a place where we're lying to and really disowning our own truth, our own selves there. It's like, oh, you know, I can't show up in all of this pain, or I can't show up in like, I got a zit on my face, or, you know, there's these places where we're taught not to show that side. And that's a place where we're really not loving ourselves or honoring what's true and right for us. And when we show up in that place of hiding or masking, it's where we don't allow someone to love us there either. Does this make sense? Are you hearing? Yeah. So I do want to just talk a little bit more about radical honesty. And I know it's radical in the sense of like, you know, it's It's radical because it's so brave. It's so courageous to show up and love yourself even when or even if someone's going to have a reaction to you. Like, hey, Scott, I'm upset right now because whatever, who knows, whatever my perception is of the world, I'm upset because of who knows. You breathed in my direction, right? Did anyone have that teenage thing, or that's when your sibling is sitting in the car and they look in your way and they like and you're like, Mom, they breathed on me. Okay, maybe it was just me.
I'm experiencing that more as an adult than as a child.
See,
Let me tell you, it's embarrassing.
you breathed on me. And
We
it's
all
not
need to raise up.
yeah, right. It's not really about it's not about that. It's just about your underlying frustration that you don't feel like you can talk about. Like sometimes I'm just so upset that I'm not getting what I want. If I can just be honest, I'm not upset. I'm getting upset that I'm not getting what I want in the way that I want it. That I'm like, oh, that person looked at me in this particular way. And I'm just going to make a whole story up. So I'm just going to say a little bit about some radical honesty pieces. So, of course, I'm going to bring in who brought that work in the world, and his name's Brad Blatton. And it's really about his book is really about speaking like really directly. And as much as I think that direct and blunt conversation can be useful in some places, I also think that there's a way to make it really compassionate and kind. I'm not gonna be like pokey, because I know that Scott likely not going to be able to hear me unless I come from a place of connection and compassion. And so the place right here is, if I want to share something with Scott, if I want to share something from my heart, to drop into compassion, to drop into connection first, and to really like create that container, right? So if I want to be radically honest and I've got some heavy shit to talk to Scott about, I'm not going to just be like, here, hold my stuff. I'm going to be like, hi, Scott. Hey, I've got some stuff coming up and I would love to create a containered conversation about, what's coming up for me. And I'm wondering if you have capacity and time for it. And if it's not right now, can we set a time in the future for an hour or two of conversation? Because I also really want to hear where you're at as well. Again, we're always going to try to stay in connection and compassion and understanding. So I need to share these things because it's going to fester inside me, like most humans. But creating space for him to get heard as well. The balance, the mutuality piece of connection. So speaking with care. Write down your truth, because remembering it is from your truth that you're speaking from. And it might be something that I want to share with Scott that he's doing, that other people are being impacted. It might not just be me. It's like the difference between calling out and calling in. Calling out is like, this needs to stop. It's very pokey. It's very aggressive. And calling in is, hey, Scott, I really want to understand why you do this thing. Do you have time to talk about it? Do you have space? I'm noticing. I'm wondering, coming from this place of like, hey, I want to help you. I want to love you. Right? How's this for you, Scott?
It's beautiful.
Okay.
I'm really, really appreciating it. And I think a couple of things I've noticed as you've been speaking is, and I'm going to put it on so that it's just automatic, goes to whoever's speaking. The balance, right? That balance of being honest and still creating connection, being compassionate. How many of us have heard those horrible words of, I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest, which now entitles me to be cruel, right? So just being honest does not mean being cruel. But really finding that balance of really sharing what's honestly going on with us. And I love that Trish really emphasized how important it is to create a container. That's a really good word for what Trish has brought up. And it's a big word in Love Coach Academy, creating a container. And what I like about that word is that it requires some thought. Okay, well, if Trish and I are going to have a difficult conversation, what does the container need to be in order for us to have that conversation? We both need to be well resourced. We both need to be in agreement that we're going to talk about it. Maybe we need to have an agreement about a time limit. Maybe we need to make an agreement that there's certain parts of that conversation that are off limits. Like maybe I'm not ready to hear what other people are saying about me, but I'm willing to hear how Trish is experiencing me, just as an example. So setting a container for a difficult conversation, it's a really important thing to remember to do.
My ex fiance, I love to call him that. I really like that word a lot. It's nice to say. um, we created this. It was a container, but it sounded a little like consensual conversation. Do you want to have a consensual conversation? Which meant that both people were required and asked to create space, to create the time, the presence, and the connection. And that was a really helpful place for both of us. Is like, we need consensual conversations where both of us are saying yes to. Because he would get home and I'd have all this stuff bubbling, and then I just like blah, blah, or he would get home and have all this stuff bubbling, blah, 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 and it really creates this respectful space of being heard and being seen. Because that's what we want, right? Everybody wants to be heard, seen, and understood, I think. And that's some aspect of nature, the nature of connection. So just to speak a little bit about how to have a kind, compassionate, loving, radically honest conversation. So because I can't actually type it in the chat box or copy and paste, Zoom, I'm just going to give you some points here. Think before you speak. Is it true? If someone can argue with it, then it's actually an opinion, judgment, or projection. You were late is a judgment. You arrived at 8:08 is the truth. Is it helpful? So is it true? Is it helpful?
I want to come in for a moment just on the truth piece. And this is kind of classic compassionate communication. A good way to differentiate is it an observable fact versus an opinion?
Yes.
And a way to consider that is if a video camera was filming it, a video camera has no opinion. It just films, right? So what would the video camera see, right? The human being says, you're late. The video camera just sees, like she said, you arrived at 8:08 p.m., whatever it is. So just again, is it a neutral observable fact? In NVC, we kind of reduce it down to, is it an observation or an evaluation? And it's really important for us to just keep asking ourselves, am I expressing an evaluation or an observation, right? Oh, Trish, you're wearing a scarf again this morning. That's an observable fact. Oh, Trish, I love when you wear those scarves. That's an evaluation. And by the way, evaluations can still be complimentary, but it's still an evaluation. Anna Prabha, you are so hot. It's still an evaluation, okay? So just learning to differentiate between evaluations and observations. Okay, take it away, Trish.
Opinion. So it really is based on an opinion, and if it has emotion behind it, generally, if it has some fire, that's a place to slow down.
Yeah.
Right? It's a place to slow down and check your perception right there. Is it helpful? Does it create genuine connection between the two of you? Now, again, it's like, am I going to dump my judgments all over someone? Scott, we've got this thing. I know you do this thing. Da, 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 da. I just got to tell you about it again. Great. Is it helpful? Or am I helping? Or am I just digging myself or Scott into a hole? Am I playing the right wrong game? And that's really a good place to slow down. Is it inspiring? Are you genuinely interested in creating a win-win? And so I would like to just add one more win on that because it's just how it works for me in my brain, fertile brain. It's like, is it good for Scott? Is it good for me? And is it good for everyone? Because when we have connection, then everyone wins too. Because he's coming from a different place, a more full place. I'm coming from a more full place. And I'm not saying that hard conversations or challenging conversations aren't going to leave you feeling a little like, oh, I'm heavy. I'm feeling like I'm feeling. But they're not going to make you it's not going to be reeling because there is going to be that tether, that weaving, that silk thread of connection. Is it necessary? And this is a big piece. Check your intention. What's your agenda here? What's your intention? And if it has an element of venting or make wrong, slow down and practice letting that go. Maybe now's not the time to speak to your person. Maybe you need space. Maybe you need to vent to someone else so that you can come back to compassionate communication. If you're not interested in hearing what the other person has to say or how they're feeling, take some space because this is the nature of building connection. If you don't, what do you say, Scott? If you don't care about the person, oh, there's this like perfect line. If you don't care about the person, wait until you do and come back. Like you have something like that. I know. Scott and I were joking this morning that I know his tools. I know the names
She knows
of
my tools better than I do. She'll bring them up. It's like, oh, I said that.
Well, if you don't care about the person yet, take space, take a breath, go for a walk, talk to someone else, journal, really get clear first before you come dump your angry hot lava all over someone you love. Because if you want to create more disconnection, that's a real good way to do it. So is it necessary? Can you let go of that? And always remember, Marshall Rosenberg's like, okay, count to 100, now do it again. 10, 15 more times to just really come back to compassionate, loving space where you care and you're really interested in the other person again. And is it kind is the last. Is it kind? Because there is a way, like, I'm so glad that you brought it up, Scott. I'm just being honest. Can be loving, can be kind, if you want it to be. If you want to speak to the person's heart and want to stay in connection, that's a real good place to do it. So something that I've been writing, just one last piece, is to ways to call people in. And it's checking your intention and tone, coming from a place of compassion, and really checking your agenda. Reaching out, but make it private. So generally when someone's like called out in public, it can create a lot of resistance. So check them, reach out in private. That's a really I thought this out and I didn't want to put you on the spot. Ask if they're available for conversation. Lead with genuine curiosity. Establish empathy and connection, especially before launching into any grievances. Mm. And ask the person who made the mistake, like, hey, I heard I heard that post, or I saw that post, or I heard you speaking. I'm curious about what you meant by that. Like, really ask what their intention was, because that's going to call them in. You're genuinely curious, right, about what's in their heart. I mean, you know this person, they're likely probably not doing harmful things. Most people don't act that way. Listen with compassion, because this might be a sensitive, when you bring up something that you're noticing or something that you have to share, taking a breath, listening from compassion, because it might be someplace that's really sensitive for them. Mm-hmm. Listen to them as a child, but not patronizing, right? I think you know the difference. This whole group is really emotionally intelligent. Ask if they're open for feedback and how they may receive the information. And this is a big piece because this is also the piece of inviting them in. Oh, I hear where you're coming from in your post or in what you said or whatever in what you're saying. I think that I understand it. Are you open for feedback? And is there a way, and if you are, is there a way that you listen to it best or hear it best? For me, as Trish, I like the compliment sandwich. Say what I'm doing well, tell me the heavy stuff, say what I'm doing well. Not something about my appearance either. So I know that about myself. So it's finding places in your, then that's love, right? That to me is love, is finding a way to understand people in that way. And if they are open, help them understand what changes they can make through creating steps and helping them understand how they could have approached it differently. So like, oh yeah, I did this, I could have done this better. And this is ways that you could have done it better. But not in the judgment. Better as in like, I mean, we're all here because we're growing, right? We're growing and evolving. We're having evolutionary relationships through compassion and love. That makes sense? Does anyone have any questions here? Sometimes I worry, just being really honest, sometimes I worry when I leave the room speechless. I'm like, oh.
I'd love to open it up and get some input. Anaprabha, you look like you have something you could share.
Well, thank you. The aspect of the appreciation piece that we do with Love Coach Academy, when you're going to be sharing and setting a sacred container to share with someone, I feel this, the point of really, I like Trish, what Trish said, the compliment sandwich. I think that's an awesome way to start and end. But so important to what I've found is really go into the appreciation of that person, of that being, of the willingness to be there in the conversation, or just what you've been experiencing with your relationship, and go from a really positive, start with the positive, right? So I really kind of make that a discipline for myself, to start with. Because often, we get caught up in just going into the negative because we're not feeling good. We're going to set the container and then we're going to start, right? Yeah, get real serious. And then it gets real heavy. And then what I think can happen is the other person gets scared, and shuts down, gets afraid they're going to be abandoned, so it's really hard to let it in.
Oh, probably it's such a good point, because you want to start in a conversation, especially about connection, from a place of a positive. Like in conversations and some relationships and experiences are like bank accounts. If you're constantly, making a withdrawal, like if you're starting with a negative, then you're just going to create more negative. But if you're really showing up in appreciation, that person, you're starting from the positive and allowing it to balance those experiences out. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, there you go. So Trish, I was just wondering if you got any tips on how to get things back to that connected space when you can feel the energy shift and it just starts going in the wrong direction, and even when you've taken a pause, you're still getting in the way of being defensive and getting the boxing gloves back. Whereas, because you know when the energy changes, it happens so quickly, and sometimes it runs away from you, and before you know it, it's all just gone to shit. Like, what's some tips on how to bring it back?
Glad you asked it. I know Scott has some tips, and I'm going to tell one of them. Slow down. Like, the first step is to slow down. Also to check your agenda. Something that I learned from Misha recently was really powerful. So there is a point for me, is like, is my agenda to be heard and seen right now? Because I'm going to push that. And I know as a human, I'm going to push that. And he might also push that too. So what is my agenda? And who's the person with the highest flame, like the highest fire, like, ah, because that person is going to need some connection. So slow down and really get curious. Because if let's say I started the conversation and I wanted to bring something up, and now that person is so triggered, the balance needs to shift to that person. Like, okay, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to get curious what's up for them. without pushing my agenda or needing to be heard, because it will happen. I trust that me getting heard is going to happen when that person feels heard, seen, and understood. It has to come, like, conversations aren't always weighted in balance. And if we can understand that too, and really understand, like, there's going to be some places where I'm going to have to hold my want to be heard. I'm going to have to mourn that need for wanting to share whatever it was that I wanted to share. I'm just going to have to hold it. Because again, it might be so sensitive for that person. Here's an example, actually. So he's reading me this book the other day, and he's reading it about, it's about racism. And he said something to me, and I was like, I got so touched by it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm racist. And I got so touched, I got so hurt that I was just like, this is so out of my value system. How could I have ever even behaved that way? I just got so pushed, like, and he had to slow down and really just address what it was for me. I mean, it took a day for me to calm down from that space so that he could actually just share what he meant, what it was he wanted me to see in that space. And it really is acknowledging what's alive for me. You know, what it could be, some sense of my personality or my identity or ego that needs to feel safe in that section. Because there's a lot of things that run in the human brain, right? A lot of things that are, there's like front facing, where we're out here doing the things and we're like, we're going to have a consensual conversation. And then there's a lot of stuff that runs. And that's like, you know, the filters of childhood trauma, the filters of, you know, social belief systems, our own belief system, like that's all running in the background. So when someone's triggered or when someone's on fire, to slow down, to be like, wow, Sarah, there's stuff coming up for me, and I'm really interested in what's going on for you right now. And that has a tendency to shift, because that person, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, is like, a lot of people just want to be heard, and that friction comes from like, who gets to be heard now, who gets, and we start to like play this, like, it's not intentionally one-upping, but we're so afraid of disconnect that we forget that sometimes it's not about the balance to actually bring it back to connection.
I really love what you just shared, and I want to just riff on it for a moment. Yeah, when things are crunchy between two people, both parties want to be heard, understood, and cared for. I want to add that, and cared for. And so, Sarah, you asked such a good question. How do we come back to that connection? And again, just riffing on what Trish said, we've got to be willing to put our own agenda aside, our own need to be heard, understood, and cared for on the back burner, and give that to the other first. How can I show them understanding? How can I show them care? How can I listen? A wonderful question to ask, and I do this in my sessions all day long, but what do you most want me to know or to understand right now? It's a great way to like get to the heart of the matter. So if Trish and I have had a thing and I'm trying to come back into connection with her, Trish, what do you most want for me to know or to understand right now? And yeah.
Sounds like I'm hurting. If you can boil it down too, from if you can, I mean, I know that sometimes our partners who aren't here aren't practicing this, but if you can boil it down and you're highly upset, it's like, I'm hurting. I want connection. I'm afraid. If I can just boil it down to those things, it gives Scott the opportunity to show up in his authentic expression and not in the way that I want him to show up in connection with me. Collaborative.
Love to open it up to any thoughts, questions, comments, because we've shared a lot. How's this going for people?
I would love to ask a couple things, and I was wondering, Trish, if there is a visual for this, is there a chance we could see your screen for just a moment?
Yeah, I'm putting the spotlight on
For
Trish.
which exactly?
Well, The list which ended with being kind, particularly, yeah.
It is a Love Coach Academy tool, and I will. Yes, let me hold on.
Okay, I thought that was really powerful, and I don't want to lose the visual.
No,
Seeing the list helps me a lot. And I mean, there are so many questions and thoughts that I have.
this right here.
Wonderful.
There it is.
So
Good job, Trish, finding that. Very impressive.
Very
God,
impressive.
I had it up.
She was using it. Yeah.
I'm gonna give it to you straight. I mean, and then there's two other pieces that are not on this document.
Can we see the other bit as well?
Oh, it's in my. How embarrassing! It's in my notes. Like I create a bunch of. Hold on. I'll send this document to you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's fine if we do that. Just a second. I'm gonna turn on my video.
I actually write a lot of things in notes. Does anyone else?
Uh-huh. I do that. I'm taking notes in my notes right now.
Okay, here, let me see if I can. Notes. Here's my notes for calling people out versus calling people in. Can you see this?
Awesome. Yes. This
So
is
this piece right
fantastic.
here is what I was going for.
Yes. This is really great.
And I'm going to probably, this will eventually turn into a post, but it needs a lot of work to make it kind.
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. So one question that I have is, I have a specific example, one specific example among other things too, but let's say that somebody doesn't like the way another person does something, and they come at them and they're like, you did this, you should do it this way. Like an example would be like, your tone is incorrect, you should say blah 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 in this tone. And I think the experience hearing that is kind of like, first of all, when a tone is complicated, it's often because that person is confused, or as you say, inflamed, and it's not always a self-correctable moment, I think. And when it's told as instruction, it almost starts to feel like you are like furniture to be moved around. You didn't ask, you didn't consent to feedback. And yeah, you don't want to be told you're not a robot. So how do we break down to communicate what you would prefer, in that? How can we communicate maybe a better way of doing that? Or yeah.
Can I?
You
I'm
go.
The question I would ask that person, and I'm trying to make this general for all of us, what is it that you're actually needing? Like if you're wanting me to change the tone of my voice, are you needing more safety? Are you needing to feel more connection? Like if we can, when somebody gives us a direct, I need you to, or you should blah, blah, blah. Well, what is it that they're actually needing, right? And if we can identify that, the strategy is to change the tone. The need is more safety, as an example, right? And so if we can really bring it down that way, it creates more of an understanding, a mutual understanding, and it shows care, right? Because obviously, if somebody says you should change your tone, Scott, and I get defensive, now we're just polarizing. But if I can show care and seeking to understand that person by really going deeper, what is it about my tone that's a problem for you? I do want to understand that. I'm not arguing about changing my tone yet. I'm seeking to understand what the person really needs. And Trish, I know I jumped in, but
No, it's good. It's good. We're doing it together. I really
oh,
like
right,
it.
right.
I'm highly motivated by collaborative, connective places. So you all know. And that's such a good point, Scott, because yes, like the more you can do your self-empathy practice,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna push this because it's really been helpful for me. The more you start to understand and hear their wants and needs, like from the place of their pain, from the place of their and when you know them, right? When you start to get to know them, it's like coming from a place of, oh wow, they're really hurting right now. How can I show up for them? And what are they needing? Because every feeling, every thought is driven by a feeling, and every feeling is driven by a want and need. So if we can just like slow down, because I know that like nobody wants to be told what to do and to be shit on. Ew, 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 we hate that. I don't want, and there's some places where I can't, like I can't, I can't morph myself because that becomes a self abandonment, right? Like I can't. So here's a good example. This is so good. My partner used to yell at me. He's Russian. He was really flamboyant, rah, like lots of stuff. Yelling as a child meant that I was going to get hit. So every time he would yell, I would go and shrink. And so I've asked him like a zillion times not to yell at me. He's like, I can't do that because it's just me abandoning me. And I was like, I don't know. What occurred to me is that if I could what occurred to me after some time, years actually, that he just wanted to be heard.
Mhm.
And we started to get into a conversation of how does he know when I hear him? Like, how does he know? And how he knew that I heard him is when I didn't like robotically say things back to him, but when I was like, not in my own feeling space. Like, I wasn't like, you're yelling at me and I'm afraid. Before he got to yelling, I could be like, oh, you want to be heard and seen right now. And I could just stop, listen. And when I got triggered, or if I got triggered, I would walk. I would say, I love you. I want to come back to connection. I'm going to walk away for a moment and come back. So it wasn't really about making him bad and wrong or making me bad and wrong, but really listening from a different place that he has wants and needs. And I know it's a really tricky place. It's a slippery slope there because you want to love your person and they want, it's just tricky there, but it's like listening to them from not from their judgment, from their wants and needs. Scott.
Mhm.
And I know Anna probably has something.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. How's that for you, Laura? Does our responses answer your question?
Yeah, this is great. It it does bring me to another question as well. And I did want to say one thing I've been thinking about a lot is, and Scott, you might be familiar with this from filmmaking. A lot of times in filmmaking, people give advice. You're asking for critique. They'll be like, this part you could try, blah blah blah. And we say, don't listen to the suggestion, listen to the information that something is bumping right here. And I feel like it's maybe a corollary situation. Like somebody tries to give you instruction like that, they're really just saying something is bumping right here for me. But I I don't know how to intervene to help the other person understand that that's a difficult process when we're told what to do. Yeah, I guess I could use more on that. Um, may I ask my other question too, or should I just?
Well, let me address that because it
Okay.
sounds like you're specifically having a challenge with somebody being very, I'm going to use the word controlling. Would that be accurate?
Occasionally, maybe. Yeah.
So remember that when people are behaving in a way that we identify as controlling, it's a strategy to meet their need for safety. Control is almost always a strategy to meet the need for safety. And so that's how we can compassion, because of course, when we think someone's trying to control us, we get reactive, right? We fight back, whatever. But if we can drop into a compassionate place of, oh wow, for this person to feel safe, they need me to watch my tone of voice. They need me to do whatever it is they're asking me to do, because that's what they need to feel safe. And that can really help us to have more compassion, to go, instead of reacting against the control, to respond to their need for safety, right? I mean, just think about those words, right? We react against control, but we respond to a person's need for safety.
Hmm. That's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
I'll play on it for one more second. That's why people who have, the more power someone has, the more controlling they tend to be, because they have more to lose, right? So that's why people who have lots of employees or lots of money or lots of responsibility tend to be more controlling, because their need for safety is even greater, because there's so much that they're responsible for.
Hmm.
And so again, that can help us to have more compassion, you know?
Yeah. That's powerful. Yeah, thank you, Scott. That's very helpful. Can I ask the other question?
Of course.
Okay, this is a different question slash situation. Um, it happened with an old friend of mine that she got to a point in our relationship where she wanted to explain her understanding of things and had no interest in mine. Do we think that that is a relationship? Is that a connection that can continue? Or when there's no ability to hear each other, that's no longer the place for connection?
So I'm going to take that question and expand it out just a little bit, so everybody can ideally relate to it.
Okay.
So I'm turning the question into what happens when we're in a relationship where there's some really significant challenges or unfulfillment. Okay. And so, of course, now we have to look at, why am I still in this relationship? Are there, and usually it's, am I still in it because of, in the past it was good, right? Or am I still in it because I'm getting some goodies? So for example, if you work for somebody and he does not give a shit what you have to say, using your example, but are you still, is the money you're making worth the investment of your time and energy? So even though he doesn't care what you have to say, if you still enjoy the job and you still are making enough, you know, the money is worth it, then you stay in the relationship. But if it's a friend, and it used to be really good between you two, but it's just gotten so polarized, it's gotten so toxic, but you're hanging in there because you guys used to be close, then that's probably time to take a break. So we have to look at, what am I really getting out of this relationship in present time, right? When it's gotten that hard. So that's my response, and I'd love to see what my partner Trish has to say about it.
That's perfect. I really don't have it. I'm like, I can't explain it any better than that. It really,
Yeah, that is excellent breakdown. I think what this conversation makes me think is that it's really very much about, yeah, sure, our flame can be higher, we take turns listening, but if we get to the place where we don't care how the other person thinks or feels, we have lost the ability to collaborate, we have lost the ability to connect. You know, I think that's no longer relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
communication is two-sided, right?
Yeah.
Much as I want, I could talk and talk and talk and talk at Anna Pravo, but if she's not there, like, I'm just gonna just keep dumping my stuff on her. Like, and as my best friend's sister said to me once, you don't have to be friends with everyone. I don't know why that was so profound, but I was like, oh, wow. You don't have to make things work with every single person. And I think we forget that, especially if it's harming both of us. And it's a really good place to look at, is this harmful for both people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Scott, I think it's also so true that, you know, sometimes it's just that it was so good in the past,
Mhm.
but it needs a reevaluation.
Mhm.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
usually when we stay in relationships that have grown toxic, it's because it used to be more fulfilling than it is in present time. That's quite often the sad truth, you know. And we remember how good it was, and we hope to go back to that. But if it's gotten to that point where that person no longer cares what we have to say, then we need to come to Jesus moment with that person. Like, hey, you know, we used to be really close and it's not feeling good anymore. Can we, you know, what happened? And can we go, what do we
Yeah.
need to do to heal and come back to that place of connection? Now, if you've had great connection with someone in the past, then a wonderful way to go back is, instead of focusing on what's wrong, go back to remembering, hey, Trish, let's share memories of when it felt really good with each other. Let's just remember, what were we doing back then? Why did it work so well a few years ago? And that's always like a pivot, because if we focus on what's wrong, like, just notice the energetic difference. Trish, we got to talk, because it's really fucked up
Don't
between us
ever
right
say that
now,
to me, please.
right? Notice the difference between that energy versus Trish. It seems like we were a lot closer a few years ago. And I just want to go back and remember how wonderful that felt, and kind of like what was going on between us when it was so good. See the difference, right? And again, that's true in any relationship. If we can pull on the memory of when our needs were being met from a place of gratitude, versus focusing on the deficiency and criticizing for the needs not being met anymore. Now, I've learned this because I've coached 1,000 couples. And so I always encourage couples, look, you've been in a long-term relationship, you know what it's like to feel your needs being met. Go into appreciation of, I so love it when you bring me flowers, versus, you haven't brought me flowers for 3 months, right? As an example, right? So I'm kind of going off in that direction, but it's just a really important thing to remember. When at all possible, lead with appreciation of what it feels like when our needs are met, versus criticism or focus on the deficiency of the needs not being met.
There's also in friendship and in dating. I used to work for a company called Relationship Hero, and they were big promoters of like a no contact period. And at first I didn't quite get it, but as I started to research more, is that there's a place where, again, coming back into the place where I give, I care again, letting that person, like, there is a time where it's being able, so the point of no contact had a couple things. Is like, if there's so much friction between 2 people or 3 people or a group of people, that giving some space to come back into center, really honor your own needs, coming back into that self-sourcing place, and also giving yourself the opportunity to reevaluate what you want, and giving that person the space to reevaluate what they want and get into their own center, to come back into connection, or to even care. Like, again, it's like that, distance makes the heart grow fonder, or time makes the heart grow fonder. That after a couple weeks of time, that it's no longer hot anymore. I don't have the pressing, burning need to get you to see my point, Lara. I just don't have that. And it becomes this place, right? And then you're not as hot to get your needs met from me, because you've already centered yourself. And sometimes it's just going to take some time. I've had to do this with friendships and with loverships, is just I need to center myself so I can come from a place of love again. I want to love you, so I got to take some space. I want to love me, and I want to love you. I got to take some space. And that's the place where boundaries are really powerful, right? Boundaries are the place in which I can love you and me at the same time. So that's also, I think that sometimes we get into the I want to come back in connection so deeply that we like right now that the aching desire to be in connection is so pushing that we forget that other people need space. And one of my clients that I'm working with right now is really in that place of like I gotta make it, I gotta stay in connection, and she's like so desperate for that, and her partner, who's a little avoidant, is like, oh my god, and she feels suffocated, right? So it's like, okay, what if giving space was love that person? And she was like, and it's also asking for and offering reassurance, tethering that piece back in, like, I need some time. It might be an hour. It might be a day. It might be a week. It might be 4. I don't know. But I'm going to need some space. I love you and I want to stay in connection with you. And I'm so angry or I'm so upset. I'm so sad that I don't want to drag you into my space, right? I got to take care of me and come back to you so I can take care of you, right?
It's 11 o'clock, and there's a whole practice that Trish and I talked about that we want for you guys to do. So, by the way, welcome Deborah and welcome back, Mindful Manny, both of you representing the state of Florida. Okay, so a reminder that the class was all about the meaning of life, and the meaning of life is we're here to learn to love, starting with ourselves. And we established that then that becomes our life's journey, is learning to love ourselves despite our childhood wounding or our adult disappointments and disillusionments.
Or the way other
And
people think about us.
was that?
And despite the way other people feel about
And
us.
despite, yeah, there you go. That's a big one. Absolutely. Despite our perception of how other people see us. It's not even how people really do see us, it's our perception of how people see us, right? That, we get into that paranoid place or whatever it might be. So I've coined a phrase, which Trish reminded me of today, which is our veils of past pain. Our veils of past pain. And I really love that phrase because it's really true. We all have these veils of past pain that come down and color our ability to see another person or to see the world clearly. I'll give an example that probably most of us can painfully relate to. You're in a good mood, and then all of a sudden, somebody who really triggers you comes into your field. They call you, or they show up at your office, or they show up at a party that you're at, and literally you go from being in a great mood to contracted, and the veil of past pain comes. Oh my God, he's here. Oh my God, she's calling me, right? Who can relate to that example, right? Thank you. Well, what happened? Nothing actually really happened other than someone we get triggered by entered our field and a veil of past pain came down. I'm not safe now because he's here. I'm not safe because she's calling me, right? And of course, that's to be honored. It's to be understood. But it's a good example. Nothing actually, they didn't really threaten us. It's all in our brain because the veil of past pain came down. So we have veils of past pain that influence how we see certain people. And on a deeper level, we have veils of past pain about how the world is or who we are in the world. Now, this is where doing deeper work with someone like Trish or Anna Prabha or myself, is helpful because a lot of our veils of past pain are formed when we're little, when we're children, right? Oh, daddy wasn't really that bad. You know, that's just the way the world treats me, right? Or that's just the way men are, as an example. Um, you know, because Anna Prabhu talks frequently about it. You know, Anna Prabhu talks about learning how to work with a low-grade state of anxiety, and to be hypervigilant because she had an alcoholic father, right? So there's like a big veil of past pain of, I never know when the person who's supposed to provide stability and security is going to hurt me or to be dangerous, right? So there's a common example of a painful veil of past pain. You know, and I hope you don't mind me using that example on a problem. And so learning to be in touch with, okay, what are my veils of past pain? And this is really important for our journey of life, and also certainly in our journey of relationships. Because if I have a veil of past pain, let's say I'm in in my relationships, I've given more than I've gotten back, right? And so now I have, as an adult, a perception that I'm going to love you more than you love me back. That's a really good thing to be aware of before I go into my next relationship, and to even be able to share that with somebody that I'm going into a relationship with, right? I have a veil of past pain that it starts off really great, but then you're going to find out who I really am and you're not going to love me, right? So learning what our veils of past pain are, both in relationship and in relationship to life itself, right? In relationship to life itself. Things are going to be good for a while, but then the rug's going to get pulled out from under me. That's a pretty common veil of past pain that people have about their relationship to life. Good things end, right? That's a common relationship to life. That's a veil of past pain that people have. Now, we don't need to experience that over and over, but if we believe that's the way the world treats us, if we believe that's what's going to happen, we are pretty good at manifesting it. That's just the way men are. Men are, men abandon me. Bless you. God bless you. Oh my God, Trish is having a sneezing attack. Is it something I said? Is it a veil of past pain getting triggered through your nose? I'm going to give one more example, a specific example, and then we're going to bring it to all of you because I'd love to see if we can all start identifying. So as I'm telling the story, you can half listen to my story and you can half start thinking about what are some veils of past pain you'd be willing to share with the group. So the story is I was teaching a workshop in San Diego. This was quite a while ago. It was about 10 years ago. And I asked, we were talking about veils of past pain. And I said, who has a veil of past pain? And a woman came up and she said, well, yeah, I mean, but it's true. My mother was a cocaine addict and she couldn't take care of me. And so she rejected me. She abandoned me and she shipped me off to my grandmother. And my grandmother took care of me because my mother didn't really love me. My mother rejected me. And since then, everybody I've ever loved has rejected me. It's only a matter of time before some man that I fuck or some person that I get close to is going to reject or abandon me. That's just the way life is. And she really, really was like that emphatic about that's the way it is. And as I got to know her, because I ended up coaching her and working with her quite a bit, sure enough, she at that point was in her early 40s, and she had a good solid 20 years experience of men. And she was an attractive woman. She would meet a man, that have sex, and then he'd leave. And that's what she experienced. And it all went back to her mother, the perception that her mother had abandoned her. Now, what we did was I helped her to understand that it wasn't that her mother abandoned or rejected her. Her mother wasn't capable of loving her the way she wanted to be loved. We had to reinterpret that very painful experience. Now, the pain's real of the mother leaving, the pain's real, but the interpretation that my mother's rejecting me and that's the way the world is, the world will reject me. That was an interpretation she had adopted as a reaction to that painful experience. As I helped her reinterpret it, that it wasn't that that's the way the world treats her, the world's going to abandon and reject her. The proper interpretation was her mother wasn't capable of taking care of her. So the mother actually made a smart choice. She put her with someone who could take care of her, the grandmother. And as Linda, that's the woman I was working with, really grasped it. I mean, she went into an existential crisis because all her life she had believed something that wasn't true. She believed that that's the way the world treats me. The world is going to reject and abandon me. And so she had recreated that over and over and over. And so she went through the existential crisis of, oh my God, I've been living in a belief that's not accurate. And that was a whole process that I had to walk her through. And she's now happily married to a man who's very devoted to her. Now, I am in 3 minutes telling you a story that took about 3 months, right, for her to go through that transition. But the point of the story is she had a veil of past pain based on an interpretation that wasn't accurate, but was very self-destructive. So of course she attracted men who were going to, have sex with her and then not, they weren't really the devotional type, right? There were more players, there were more, they were available for a level of devotion. And she had to really work on cultivating within herself the ability to imagine a man being devoted to her. And the way we did that, by the way, was I helped her to really drop into her grandmother's devotion to her. Instead of focusing on her mother rejecting her, the positive experience of a grandmother that was very devoted to her. And then some of her friends, female friends, who do have men that are devoted, she had to reprogram her perception based on what she's observed. So I know that this is a lot that I've said, but it's all a setup for us today, because it's an intimate group, to look at, okay, what are some veils of past pain that I have that are getting in the way of the way I see the world or life, or the way I see a particular person? And how can I lift that veil, right, through some of the tools that Trish and I are here to offer? How's that sound? Is that, yeah? Yeah? Okay, good. I'm going to turn over to my teaching partner, Trish.
For a second. So just in my own experience of doing the inner child, youthful child thing, is that there's a lot of the veils of past pain that are coming from a 3 or nonverbal, pre-verbal to 7-year-old belief system. So some of these triggers or these really fearful places that we get into are literally child thinking. And it's really important here to be really kind and gentle, because there's places where there's just, where women are not safe, or where men are not safe, or when the world looks a certain way, and we forget that our perception is really a fearful, youthful place. And I just wanted to bring that place in. Magical thinking, or in some cases, if you had a lot of trauma in your childhood, tragical thinking, right? It's like now you're behaving, and you're 35 years old or 40 or 60 or 90 years old, and you're like, why do I do that thing? Mm-hmm. And why do I see every man that comes into my life as scary or untrustworthy? And how can I actually unravel that? How can I actually love me there? And then the other place was the places where we project, where someone can't or won't love us, are often places we haven't accepted or loved ourselves. So if I think that Anaprabha or Deborah or Scott or anyone is like, I'm like, oh, they're judging me for that. It's just my own interpretation of some place that I haven't really loved myself. And also that place of being triggered by someone else's whatever it is that they do is maybe a good place to look at. Like, oh, that person's whatever it is that they do might be a good place for me to look at inside of myself. An inner judgment. Okay, Back to you, Scott.
Well, first of all, thank you, Trish, and thank you, Anna Prabha, for what you've written in the chat box so far. I really appreciate, your vulnerability and your honesty and kind of leading the way for us to, share some of our veils of past pain. So thank you. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's really powerful to, this veil of past pain is brilliant. I love this work, and it's so powerful to, experience it inside your body, because like, as you were saying about the story you're telling about the woman, like a similar story, for me with my ex-husband, where actually so many of my needs were getting met in like really powerful ways. We manifested so much powerful stuff. But these veils of past pain in both of us came up and sabotaged it. It's just that I didn't realize exactly the extent of that veil of past pain. And I didn't have the skills to work with it as I do now, which could have changed things, because there was a high level of getting my needs met, both of us. But then there was a destructive part of not feeling maybe worthy, of wanting to stay in the old story, of, well, this person isn't safe, or my father wasn't safe, so this man isn't going to be safe. And, so the veil of past pain, you just on this really deep vibratory level, really is strong in our nervous system, in the DNA, in the cellular. So there is that, resonance that we have with it, and the desire to want to keep creating it if we don't become aware of it and consciously make choices. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
A couple of other things about it, and then I'd love to, have some of us just work with our veils of past pain. Sometimes if we've spent a long time in a belief system, it's really hard to leave that belief system. Right? Remember, I talked about how with the woman, she went into an existential crisis, because that's what an existential crisis is when we really believe something and all of a sudden we realize it's not true. We all had that when we went from really believing in Santa Claus and then learning that, oh, Santa Claus isn't real, or the Tooth Fairy, or the Easter Bunny. Those are examples of little existential crises that we went through when we were kids, right? So sometimes we become very attached to a belief system, even though that belief system doesn't support us, even though it's not getting our needs met. We're still attached to it because I've spent so much time believing it. And so much time, my life has been in reaction to that, oh my God, how can I as an adult even consider changing it? Because it would mean that I just blew through 40 years of my life, or whatever it is. Right? Does that make sense to people?
Yeah. I have this just quickly, but also when you go deeper and deeper into these stories and the family dynamics, and I also had this story with my father, but then my father was always also able to really share with him and get really clear, and had a really beautiful coming together with him. And then I realized with my mom how it was she was so competitive with me. But I didn't quite get how that really, it was so much survival. It's so much survival growing up in a traumatic family, of alcoholism and being hit, and just how do I just survive this thing, that you don't kind of get to tune in. And sometimes the alcoholic is who everybody wants to look at as the enemy. But then there's also a lot going on with the mama, with the mother. And where are they protecting you? Where are they not protecting you? Where are they, supporting you? Where are they not supporting you? Where are they being competitive? Not, so how you're being supported. And I just see where on an energetic level, how I can attract women who, like my mom, and who are very competitive, right? Which is really uncomfortable, and damaging. And it's just this, it's a certain dynamic. There's a love-hate situation going on, right? Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. One last thing, and then I really want to kind of open it up to some of you to work us on this. When we have a veil of past pain about another person, right? To what degree are we only going to collect evidence to support that painful story about that person? And to what degree are we open to changing the story? And that's a tough one, because sometimes, again, we get very committed to, no, you cannot trust him. No, she's a bitch, right? And we collect evidence to prove that you can't trust her, that she's a bitch, because we've got that veil of past pain. But again, if we're wanting to, and it's still okay to set boundaries, right? But again, to what degree do I collect evidence to support my veils of past pain, to support my perception of this person or my perception of how life treats me? So it's always a good question to ask. What am I collecting evidence for? We talked about this last night in the Straight Talk show that I did with Trish. One of my favorite quotes from Einstein, like one of the smartest people ever. And his quote was, "The true measure of intelligence is how quickly we can change our beliefs." That's the true measure of intelligence. So again, how attached to our veils of past pain are we? And how willing to change them are we? And to what degree are we collecting evidence? Yeah. So, question, do we want to stay in a group, or for people to feel safer to kind of share about the veils of past pain, should we go into breakout groups? And I'm kind of putting that out to everybody. If we could, go into breakout groups, small ones, like I could lead one, Trish could lead one, Anna Prabha could lead one, or we can all stay together it's a small group anyway. So do people have a preference?
I'm interested in staying together, but I'm open for anything.
Okay. All right, well, let's try staying together then. But I'd love to open it up to anybody who is willing to share a veil. Candace is raising her hands. Okay, hey Candace. I know she's working on unmuting. You can do it, Candace. Candace will unmute. She's going to get it down. She's going to figure it out. You can do it, Candace. You got it. You got it, Candace.
All right. I hope my device doesn't talk and annoy you guys. I am deep in navigating veils of past pain, of being broken and alone and burdened and a waste of life. Yeah. Yeah. I could go on and on about, the stories, and why, yeah, I had a really shitty childhood, but I navigated that, and but since going blind, it's like everything was just brought back, and I can't find my way out of it. Just too much. Yeah.
Wow. So, first of all, thank you. Trish wrote in the chat box something that's very accurate. She said, Candace's superpower includes her ability to be raw and willingness to reveal and to feel.
That's on the Prabha.
Oh, Anna Prabha.
That was Anna Prabha. Candace, I love you, honey.
Thank you.
I'm a superhero.
So, I'm imagining that all of us, when we hear that, want to jump into fixing because we love Candace. We don't want her to hold that story because it's a really painful story. And I want to acknowledge that before we try to fix it, let's just acknowledge the pain because the pain is real. And that's true for any veil of past pain. The pain is real, even if the story is not.
I
And
started a revision of the story. I planned on dying at a very young age. I wasn't scared of death. It was my plan. Life was too hard. Everyone around me either died or went to jail or got severely injured. Um, and yeah, somehow that's just been reawakened. Like, all right, I guess I'm just meant to get high or die. And it's a shitty place.
is the fantasy about dying, to what degree is it escaping the discomfort of your present circumstances? Or to what degree is it uh, like you said, a belief that you had that you were supposed to die early? So in other words, is it the desire to escape your discomfort, or is it a story that you had from the past that's come back again?
Both. I'm just done trying to figure things out and feel better.
Mhm.
And then it just brings me back to, well, I guess I was right when I was 14 years old. And yeah, there's a part of me that just feels like I don't know, a part of me wishes I kept using and just died.
Thank you for being willing to just be so real with us in such a vivid way. So, as Trish and I were talking about the meaning of life, how can you relate to your journey of life is learning to love yourself despite such a difficult childhood, such difficult circumstances? Can you relate to the idea that this is the meaning of your life, Candace? To learn to love yourself despite how incredibly difficult your life is and has been.
I can see it, but I can't believe it. um, yeah, I don't know how the fuck I'm gonna do it.
Well, you are doing it because you're still here. You didn't die. You didn't overdose. You are here right now in present time with several people that love you. I know Trish loves you. I know I love you. I know Anna Prabha loves you. I know Deborah Haviland loves you. So right now, in this moment, you're actually doing it. You haven't overdosed. You haven't gone out and found the drugs. You haven't gone back to getting high. You are right now in present time actually demonstrating hard, real, practical self love by not self destructing. You're actually doing it. Can you take that in? Can you feel that? You know, the power that you're right now demonstrating what it means to love yourself despite how hard it is and despite the very real temptation to get high, to self-destruct. I mean, those temptations are real because you've done it. You know what that's like. You've been around it. You've done it. You've had friends who've done it. So you know what that's like. That temptation's a real temptation. And every day you're not going down that path. You're choosing love. That is powerful. You're doing it, Candace. And I think it's important for you to celebrate your daily choice of self-love, your daily choice of showing up to the empathy practice group or to Love Coach Academy or to doing your show or whatever you do to stay connected. So thank you. Thank you for modeling for us very real self-love in the light of very difficult circumstances.
It's hard to fathom. Like, I hear you and I believe you and I know it's true, but to feel the way I'm feeling right now and see this as self-love, it's like, okay, if you say so, Scott. Trying. And it's getting, more real. Yeah, that's why I come to all these things.
You know, I think when Trish was talking about magical thinking, I think a child's magical thinking that we carry as adults is, if I'm happy or if life is easy or good, then things are right. But if I'm unhappy or life is hard, something's wrong. Right? Like, that's part of a child's magical thinking. And I just want to bring it to my perception of you right now. Your life is hard and you're not necessarily happy, but it doesn't mean something's wrong.
Definitely, that's the thing. It feels like I'm doing something wrong, like I'm missing something. It should
Right,
feel
right,
shitty.
right, right. What am I missing? I mean, if I was right. But again, remember, Prince Siddhartha became the Buddha of compassion when he accepted there is suffering. There is suffering. A child's magical thinking, which most of us carry, is I shouldn't be suffering. If I'm suffering, there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with life. But that's, again, magical thinking. The sober reality, there is suffering. Candace is suffering. And that doesn't mean there's something wrong with Candace. And, just kind of bringing that to all of us. When we are suffering, when our needs are not being met, it doesn't mean that we're bad or we're wrong or that we're fucking up or that we are anything less than perfect. But we're suffering, and the suffering is real and the pain is real. But let's watch what our interpretations are. It's our interpretations that are usually would create unnecessary suffering. Right? There's the suffering because of what is, And then there's the unnecessary suffering, which comes from our interpretation.
I'm bad, I'm broken, I'm a
Right.
disorder, I'm damaged, yada yada.
Right, exactly. You know, the suffering that's real, using Candace, is going blind and the loss of sight. That's real suffering. The interpretation that there's something wrong with you is unnecessary suffering. And if you could reinterpret it as, oh my God, I am so freaking proud of myself. Despite going blind, despite all the shit with my mother, I'm not going back to drugs. I'm not offing myself. I'm not out there finding a way to get high. And celebrating that, really celebrating that as a powerful daily, moment to moment, day to day act of self love. That's the interpretation I encourage you to run through your mind. And again, applying that to all of us. Let's evaluate our interpretations. And anytime we're interpreting that our suffering, our unmet needs because there's something wrong with us, that's not accurate. Sometimes we need to make different choices. Sometimes, okay, I need to do things differently. But it's not because there's something fundamental. There's nothing wrong with anybody, really. There's just unmet needs. There's unmet values. There's suffering. And the suffering is real. And the discomfort is real. The interpretations we make about it are usually not accurate. I like what Laura C. just wrote in the chat box. She wrote, I wanted to say also that the suffering is frustration. This is really true. I gotta go to a gallery view. The suffering is frustration. The truth of things as they are, our desire for difference rather than equanimity toward the fluidity of experience, the ability to be in the moment and see how each small moment is bearable. That's really beautiful, Laura. That's beautiful. Right on. And I like what Deborah wrote. Deborah writes, watch out for unnecessary interpretations that cause unnecessary suffering. Absolutely. I'd love to open it up to anyone else who wants to share maybe an aha you've gotten about a veil of past pain through Candace's beautiful sharing and kind of where we went with that. Anybody have an aha about maybe a veil of past pain? You have? Yeah, Trish. And then Deborah.
I'd just like to say, Candace, that 3 years ago, I was going to hang myself because my boyfriend wanted to break up with me for another woman after years of abuse between both of us. And I called a young man with my same birthday who was probably 5 or 6 years younger, and he took me out to pizza. And what I got from that moment, and from a thing that, what I got from that moment was, just because one person doesn't love me doesn't mean that I'm unlovable.
Mm.
And that I was afraid of not being loved by him, that I couldn't love myself. It's just like a place. And that piece also started to walk me back that I had believed that men couldn't love me because of my dad, because of my own childhood stuff, because my dad became cold when I was 7. He no longer did stuff with me. Like there was just like, we never had we lost our connection at that place. And I created this experience in my life repeatedly to look at it. But I chose that day that I wasn't going to give up. And that was the most powerful place of self-love. I'm just not going to give up. It's going to suck. And it sucked for fucking years. If you want to know, like, it sucked for years. And I've tried hypnosis and friends. I've tried so many different healing things, and it's just the most radical form of self-love is literally to keep going. It's not rainbows and butterflies and getting your nails done and taking baths and stuff. It's just looking at the pain and finding it. Finding it and loving it. And hating it and loving it some more. And throwing a fit and loving it some more. And crying and being seen, being loved, and taking it in. There was something, the only thing that I got out of Love Landmark Forum, which I didn't like this. I didn't like the Landmark Forum. It was really emotionally cold, I thought, just if you want to know my honest opinion. But the thing that I got out of it at the very end was life is empty and meaningless unless you give it meaning. And I just gave it meaning that I was going to help other people to move through their stuff. And I just do that every day. Like, that's just what I do. I just get up and I look at my own shit and I help myself there and I help other people there. And what I see you doing, Candace, in the sense is like you give people the opportunity. You inspire us to feel and you inspire us to stay clean, to not use drugs, to check out. Did you take that in?
Can I add a little something to that comment?
Yes.
Yeah, I also think that Candace, you know, as others have said, you also show a brave path toward being honest, being vulnerable, being emotional in a truth. You when you share through your videos, you show how you struggle, you show others that it's okay to struggle, you show your paths through. Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that you give specifically every day, just through your authenticity, your sharing, you know, just to personalize that to what you're already doing. I think it's very powerful.
Mhm.
And
Deborah.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Candace, hi.
Just cracking a window and being really hot.
Oh, good. Definitely. Yes. Yes. You know how to feel your body and feel your feelings. And, you know, as a dancer, I really empathize with you. You know, I think as dancers, we feel every single inch and square of our body and our feelings. And so I want to empathize with you about that suicide thing. Like when I got divorced, I just wanted to kill myself. And I said that often. I finally realized it was my signal word for this hurts so much. I don't know how to contain it. I don't quite know how to navigate this. And I'm hurting so much. And so I really empathize with that. I really empathize with that place where you want to jump out of your skin. I imagine that feeling of just, I want to end this suffering. And so I had to really discover, you know, what works for me. And I think you're kind of similar, which is that we love to, you know, be with people, connect with people, touch people, dance with people. And right now you're living alone. And boy, my heart just did a contraction and an expansion because I also empathize with that. And so sometimes we do need to find practical solutions. Like it might be really important to find a housemate right away, because when you're visually impaired, you know, we do need someone helping us, literally. And for me, going through my divorce, I found I had to reach out and talk to people when I was suffering and do healings. And I'm really offering to be on the phone with you, voice to voice, and really doing that with you. I really want to do that. And when Trish said, you know, living life on purpose, yes, I think we all need to keep finding, wow, how can I be giving my gifts and feeling, you know, that sense of fulfillment. But how are you feeling right now? You're breathing and lifting your hair up. And Ah, I'm with you. I love you. I love you. I want to acknowledge how real your feelings are and that you're so courageous to go through this. And I want to be on the phone with you more so it's real, you know, voice to voice, heart to heart. Thank you.
Candace, do you want to just kind of give us a check-in? Because of course we all are feeling you so deeply. So I'm, you know, the irony, and this is so classic. We're now asking you to give us reassurance that you're okay. That's what's really going on here, right? Now, Candace, tell us that you're okay because we love you, and yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just taking it all in and trying not to run and hide. And yeah, I really appreciate everyone sharing and empathizing. And I have a really hard time admitting these things to you guys, especially like my spiritual community. There's so much story and judgment and shame that I'm not spiritual. If I was living my spiritual life, I wouldn't be having these thoughts.
Mm. Mm. Trish.
Candace, this is the most destructive thing that the spiritual community ever laid out. Is that feelings and anger and sadness and despair and depression are not sacred. Literally, the it's all good spirituality doesn't work. It's destructive. It's in fact, the more you feel and the more you allow the feelings and what's real and share, that's sacred. All of your humanness, all of each one of us, each one of you, that's sacred. Your pain, your suffering is sacred. It is so deep within us. Like our pain, the core of our just deep, dark despair, that is the best place we can touch. It's so sacred to feel. Thank you for allowing us to share in this with you, hold you, and to get in touch with our own despair.
One of my favorite stories. I've never been a big fan of the Bible because I've always had the sense that the Bible's been so tampered with and rewritten. But I've always loved the story of Jesus getting pissed off and tearing the temple apart when they turned the temple into a marketplace. And it's a really important point for what Trish and Candace are just dialoguing about, because if we want to perceive Jesus as one of our great spiritual teachers, he got pissed. He got angry. He turned the tables upside down, right? And so anger and uncomfortable feelings and crazy thoughts are all part of the human experience. And we all have them. And again, it doesn't mean there's anything bad or broken or wrong with us. It's we're having a perfectly human experience. That's why the motto for Love Coach Academy is how perfectly human. My boyfriend broke up with me and I want to kill myself. How perfectly human. I can't believe I'm going blind. Maybe I was right. Maybe I'm supposed to die early. How perfectly human. So, you know, I guess as a way to kind of, you know, because we need to kind of complete today, just want to encourage everybody. Let's really dedicate ourselves to looking this week. Let's dedicate this week to what are my veils of past pain? What are they? Let's write them down. You know, the one that Anna Prabha has in the chat box. what are my interpretations based on those veils of past pain? What are my interpretations? What's the evidence I collect to support those veils of past pain? And then, and I encourage all of you to write it down, how perfectly human, what adjustments can I make? So I'll repeat it again. Maybe Trish will pop it in the thing. So what are my veils of past pain? What are my interpretations based on those veils of past pain? How do I collect evidence to support the interpretations or the veils of past pain? What's the evidence that I collect to support that? How perfectly human. And now what adjustments can I make? So I'll give an example from my own life. I had a really destructive relationship. It ended well over 20 years ago, but I still have a lot of veils of past pain about it and about that person. So my veil of past pain is she is toxic and she is destructive to me. And I put up a lot of walls with that particular person. That's my veil of past pain. And I can easily collect evidence by replaying over and over, regurgitating in my mind the things that she did that caused me pain or that were destructive. And I get to go, how perfectly human. I got really hurt. I paid a big price and I'm protecting myself. How perfectly human. And what can I do that's different? Maybe it's time to reach out and come into present time and see who she is today and who I am today and how we relate to each other today. Right? Which is, by the way, something I'm actually doing right now. I mean, right now, not this minute, but in general with this particular person. So there's the homework assignment for everybody. We didn't get a chance to go into people's personal stories as much as I had imagined, but who would be willing to really tackle this as a project this week? Awesome. And I'd love to invite you, this is voluntary, put it into writing and send it to me or send it to Trish or send it to both of us, so that we can read it and acknowledge you and appreciate you. Because sometimes if you know that you got a coach or someone that you're going to send it to, it'll give you more inspiration to really do it. And I promise that if you email it to us, we'll, one of us or whoever you send it to will respond. And we'll respond with love and care and compassion and probably a lot of how perfectly humans. So, any final thoughts or questions anybody has for today? Was this valuable? Was this a good? Sarah, I see your hand go up.
Yeah, so just on the homework assignment. So I've spent a lot of time like writing down my veils, trying to do some work by myself, like peeling them back, thinking about it, linking it to like my thoughts, actions, reactions, spending time sitting with the pain, like emotional release, all the stuff. But then I'm still numb for a lot of things, and I can't always identify how I feel. And I know just from like other classes and reading that being numb is a sign of trauma. And so just basically what's next? Is it time for me to actually get a coach rather than trying to do everything by myself, or just tips on how to move it? Like,
sounds like it's time to get a coach there. Definitely.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, I think you answered your own question, but it looks like Trish has something to say too.
We're excellent at hiding from our own stuff. Like we're really, really good at it. Like really. The best time, the most kind, loving movement, spiritual growth, emotional growth that I've ever had is when I had a coach and a therapist at the same time. And I was just kind of like, this person was helping me do all this stuff, and that would trigger a whole bunch of, and then this person was like, oh, I'm gonna like hold you here, and we were kind of walking this little, caterpillar of my life together, and that was because this person was helping me deal with all the things that I was really working with in my childhood, and this person was really stalking my shadow because I couldn't see some places, and that's what a coach is like someone who just stalks your shadows and be like, hey, can you see it from this place, or can you see where you're doing this? And that's, yeah, you can move yourself really far, and you can't always do it yourself. In fact, I mean, why we do our self-love work is so that we can hang out with other people, and they're going to trigger us.
Thank you.
Deborah Haviland.
Just a short little yes on what Trish just said, and that a coach and a therapist can help us with our blind spots, or as Trish said, the place that we don't quite want to look. We may be saying, I want to be honest with myself, but it's sort of hard to look at that certain thing, or what did I do to help create that situation or something? So a therapist and a coach can help us get courageous and also contain us while we face it, so that we're contained in safety and love while we face it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Deborah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Trish. I love teaching with you. And you can come get more Scott and Trish teaching this week. We are both teaching at the Evolve Fest, which we dedicated last night's Straight Talk to. Evolve Fest is 5 days of online events all about evolutionary relating. And it's Eugene Headland, my friend who put it together. If you want to learn more about it, go back and watch the Straight Talk from last night, because we had Eugene and Monique Darling on with Trish and I talking about Evolve Fest and what it means to use relationship, and not just romantic relationship, but all relationships for evolution. And so anyway, you can go back, watch Straight Talk to get a better sense of it. Or you can just go straight to evolvefest.online. It's only $200 plus there's a 25% discount if you put in the code Love Coach in capital letters, LOVECOACH, Love Coach. So it's only $150 for all these events. He's got over 100 teachers, and they're all recorded, so you can, you don't have to listen to them all live. You can go back and listen to the recordings for a month. Anyway, Trish and I are teaching this Wednesday afternoon, and then Trish is teaching a class on Wednesday night. Emily is teaching a class, and a lot of amazing people. So go to evolvefest.online. Strongly recommended. Sarah, time for a coach. And there's a lot of wonderful coaches within Love Coach Academy. Pick which one you vibe with and reach out. Tonight on Saturday Night Alive, animals. It's all about our animals and pets. And it's really going to be a fun show. It's going to be one of the lightest shows we've ever done. But we've got really great speakers, presenters, and musicians, and it's going to be really, really fun. So join us. You can even see a video that includes Trish and her cat out hiking together. So anyway, and then finally, there's so much going on. Tomorrow I'm doing Andrew Harvey is my favorite living author. And if you don't know who Andrew Harvey is, he's extraordinary. And he's doing a private workshop just for the Saturday Night Alive tribe. And that's tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And really, a chance to be in an intimate workshop with Andrew Harvey is a really, really big deal. And this guy's written over 40 books. He's collaborated with everyone from the Dalai Lama on around. He has the greatest understanding of multidisciplinary spiritual teachings of anyone I've ever met. He's extraordinary. And we get to hang out with him. And I'll give you guys, again, there's a code that'll get you a 50% discount. The price for the whole day workshop is $99, but if you put in the code FRIENDS2, friends and the number 2, it'll be 50% off. So it's only $49 to spend an entire, workshop with Andrew tomorrow. I really encourage you to come do that. I can put the link. Do I have the link handy? Give me a minute and I will find the link. Andrew he's amazing. I've been a huge fan of Andrew Harvey for a very, very long time. And then to get to know him through Saturday Night Live, and to be honest, to become friends, because he and I get together online and we hang out and we share things with each other. It's been really, really cool. It's been one of the joys of the last year has been to get to know Andrew Harvey. And what I'm doing is going into my Facebook to find where I've got the link to register. While I'm doing that, Trish, can you cover and say something wise and brilliant and wonderful?
I actually want to promote Laura's class next week. And her class on identifying a world identity workshop, world building identity workshop, identifying and communicating your values and needs. So for those of you who are, who purchased the whole program, and people who want to just promote her work as well, go ahead and share that out. I do have to find the link there too. I really appreciate you all for showing up for you and for being radically honest with what's alive. Thank you.
There's the link. Unfortunately, Facebook makes it really long, but if you click that link and then the code is friends2, that will get you Andrew Harvey at a 50% discount.
When does Relationship Essentials start? The third.
Relationship Essentials will have a bonus class on April 3rd, but it'll officially start on April 10th.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Can you put something on social media about that with the time zones and stuff so I can see if it works for me?
Yeah, it's the same time. It's
the same time. Oh,
yeah,
way.
Saturday morning at 10 a.m. specifically so that Sarah in England can participate.
Sign me up, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, and the Andrew Harvey thing tomorrow is at 9:30 a.m. So it's a half hour earlier.
Can you say exactly what the Andrew Harvey focus is going to be? What's he wanting to really address?
Yeah, so he wrote a book called Radical Regeneration. But you know what I will do? Give me a moment and I will play a video clip of Andrew sharing about that. So I need you to cover for me for a minute, Trish, while I pull this up.
Thank you.
Actually, I've almost got it.
You want me to cover it with a duvet?
Actually, you know what? I've got it. Here is us, and here's the third one promoting our March 14th.
That was it. I mean, it wasn't it?
This is Andrew.
Oh yeah,
talking about what he's.
Yeah, you're doing
tomorrow.
great.
You're doing.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And then this is the March the 14th one.
He's such a
My name is Andrew Harvey, and on March the 14th, I will be presenting with Scott and his crew a fabulous day dedicated to the new book that I've written with Carolyn Baker called Radical Regeneration. In the morning, for 2 hours, I will lay out the radical vision that is exposed in that book of the great death that's happening in our global dark night and the extraordinary promise of birth that it holds. I believe that the dark night that we are in is the birth canal of a new embodied divine humanity. And I will lay out that belief in precise ways that will both warn you and galvanize you. Then in the afternoon, I will offer the vision that I have of radical intimacy with all things, and the challenge to be noble in our time, and offer practices that can sustain both that level of intimacy with all things and strengthen that nobility that leads us forward into becoming sacred activists and birthers and warrior midwives of a new world.
There you go, just for you, Deborah Haviland. Isn't he amazing?
I'm saying thank you. I'm going to change my schedule around and have a guest come another day. I'm going to do it. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. He's amazing. And really, it's one of those things that like, we'll be able to say, oh my God, I spent a day with Andrew Harvey. I mean, in an intimate group. And it looks like, when I last checked, we had like 25 people registered. So, we'll probably get last minute registrations, but it's going to be intimate, so. All right. Trish, thank you for teaching with me. Everybody, thank you for being with us. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Hope to see you tonight. Oh, yes, Trish. Trish is giving me the finger.
Yeah, I know my mouse isn't working. So please don't, oh God, hold on. Don't exit the thing. Don't like close out the Zoom, please.
Don't close out the Zoom. Okay. All right. All right.
Thank you so much for the class. It was truly remarkable.
My pleasure. All right. God's blessings. So were you saying don't close out the Zoom? Is that because you're writing something, or what is it, Trish? I'm
Save the chat and my.
Oh, I've saved the chat.
Not the stuff that people sent me.
Oh, your private chat. I'm trying to get your. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording though.